Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I am back for a different type of review this time. I had made promises. I said I was going to do a book review for the first time, and I did one recording, and I really didn't like that recording. And here I am again. So, what is the book in question? Well, for those of you incapable of reading the title, it is Rainbow Six by Tom Clancy. This is actually my first Tom Clancy novel that I've read. And it's got a little bit of a special meaning. I had Rainbow Six back in the day. Actually, I still do. I found the CD the other day. And for those of you that are unaware, if you're buying this purely for or if you're listening to this purely for the book, it had an interesting development. Tom Clancy by the late '90s was really, really popular. Probably one of the top. He was kind of on the level of Stephen King. I think in recent years he's kind of faded. I think he had problems adapting his style of military fiction to the new military reality of wars. Yeah, he was kind of one of those authors. He was kind of the author that kind of wrote about imagining kind of the future of every war kind of being like the first Gulf War. And so his kind of quick solutions for his book of quick invasions and stuff and easy cleanup, it's very hard to do that when you have the rest of the population facing two wars against relatively, well, not relatively, less capable militaries, and then getting bogged down in the cleanup afterwards. I mean, come on. The stand-up Taliban force, if you call it that, was wiped out rather quickly. The Iraqi army melted away fairly quickly. Within a couple weeks, there was really no full resistance from organized military, and of course it degraded into guerrilla warfare. So that all of a sudden makes it a lot more complicated to write about that stuff. So I think that's why he kind of dropped off by the 2000s. I think he was also getting older, and he was also, of course, too many alsos, writing a bit about, he had a very Cold War mentality. In fact, that was really good at. And that's why he wrote the Jack Ryan series, which turned into the series of films with Hunt for Red October, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games, and later on Sum of All Fears. He was really good at this kind of Cold War-esque writing style. And I haven't read one of those. In fact, I'm kind of interested in going back and reading those, if only to see how his style has changed. Because, I mean, let's face it, this book is jingoistic, like really jingoistic. In fact, if you're not an American, you might be kind of offended by kind of how he writes about assumptions. I mean, it's kind of like one of those writers who's, well, you're not sure about this, because I was about to say he's kind of one of those writers who's like writing all, "Hoo yeah, America," but at the same time kind of aware, well, I should say good things about some of these other people too, like France and Israel and Germany and such. So he has those kind of moments, but that's what I was kind of talking about when I said it'd be interesting to go back and read some of his older work, because you kind of wonder if, since this was kind of much later in his career, well after he was established, well after he just had to say, "I'm putting a book out," and boom, it sold like crazy, if he was kind of pandering to the audience that he had, the classic, how should I put it, stereotypical kind of jingoistic guy. Not necessarily a person in the military. In fact, a lot of people in the military are rather cautious when they normally don't think the first solution should be bomb a country. And to his credit, Tom Clancy doesn't always have that. But you kind of know the cover out. You kind of wonder if he's like, if he, at this point in his career, was he catering to that? Did he know that was like the preconceptions that a lot of these people had, so he was writing specifically to appeal to them? Or was he always like that? Well, I guess some of you out there already know. Some of you have probably read his earlier works. I really want to pick up now one of his earlier works just to see how they compare. So right there, that might be a problem. I mean, I have to imagine if you're reading a Tom Clancy novel, if you know who Tom Clancy is, you kind of know what to expect. But I've gotten somewhat of off track, haven't I? Because I was about to say why this was special and the development of this book, and I start off by saying Tom Clancy was popular. Let's get it on track. So Tom Clancy was extremely popular by the late 1990s. So popular, he had already branched out into the movie business and made a killing. It not only helped his career, his stature, he made money from the movies, and it helped sell his other books and made him a name. So he was approached. Actually, I'm not sure if he was approached or if he approached a studio about turning his books into a. Actually, it was more of a joint collaboration where they get the idea we should do a book based. The next Tom Clancy book will base a video game on, and so they got the idea that they wanted to do a kind of a tactical shooter game, and the actual Rainbow Six game it was actually one of the really classics. It became a very popular among the real hardcore of gamers because it offered a level of strategy to it. A huge element of the first couple of Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six games were really all about in gearing up your guys, and you spent more time normally doing the planning. Like you actually had blueprints, and you would draw out on the computer. You would plan out how your men would move through this building to clear it out from terrorists. You have to go over like the reports and stuff. And it was pretty involved for the time, and the fact you had to even go and kind of gear your guys out was something you didn't see outside of RPGs. You didn't see that in a shooter. And it had this real level of authenticity to it. And I actually have to say, I think I actually like the plot of the game a little bit better. But there's slight differences, because you can kind of tell that they probably started these two kind of early and started both projects with the basic outline. Obviously, the game needed to add a lot more action sequences, because it didn't have cutscenes. It's not going to be developed. You're playing the game to have the shooting stuff. So they added a lot more terror incidences, and of course a lot more. They took like small sections of the book that didn't have anything in it, but they were like, okay, we're going to go there. There's going to be something really that happens. Like, spoiler alert: when they had the attempted a terrorist attack in Sydney, it's literally in the book. The guy just kind of walks in, and they're like, well, kind of caught you red-handed, and the guy kind of just like kind of goes a little catatonic for a little bit. Like that's it. That's all that happened in Sydney. They arrested the guy, they handcuffed him, and they put him on a plane. In the video game, it's a couple of levels where they're intercepting a convoy, and then they go and they have to stop the attack in the stadium itself. So. And of course, instead of having one person, they have like teams of security guys they sent to this, which I guess considering how it went in the book, that's probably what they should have done. So that's my introduction. I had picked this up. It wasn't brand new when I picked it up, but I picked it up, and this was one of those games that I played a lot back then. It was one of the. I didn't have a lot of PC games back then. There wasn't Steam back then, so you were a little bit more cautious when you're buying stuff, and especially on the PC, because this was also early enough where patches and you had to make sure you had the right software. Now it's very easy to fix this stuff. The patches it's automatic. It's fast, efficient. Nowadays, but back then you were always cautious when you bought something for the PC, because if that did not work, you were screwed. If it didn't work really, if you had a particular card in your computer and it did not function that well with it, nowadays if it's a big enough problem, they normally will just patch this thing and sending out, and boom, it works. But I digress. So what is Rainbow Six about? Well, Rainbow Six is actually the code name for John Clark, a character that has appeared in multiple Tom Clancy novels, and this is, I guess, his final. Well, actually, he might have had his own novel. He might have been centered in an own novel, but he's in the Ryanverse, as they call it, which is it's connected with, it's all these military fiction books that are taking place in the same universe. And it mostly centers around Jack Ryan, a CIA analyst who goes from basically being kind of a low-level CIA analyst all the way up to eventually president. And I think this book actually takes place while he's president. John Clark's one of those characters. He's from the CIA. He's normally in the background, kind of the guy that gets shit done, but also older. but he's kind of one of those guys. He's normally there as he's in some way been in the field more than Clark has, or than Ryan has. And here he's now finally, as Ryan's president, Clark has proposed and got approval to set up a new international counterterrorism task force, codenamed Rainbow, and him being leader, codenamed Rainbow 6. I don't know why they made him Rainbow 6. You figured he'd be Rainbow 1, wouldn't you? Unless they kind of just started at random. They never actually explain why he was 6. At least I don't remember they did. I mean, it's a couple hundred pages in that book. I might forget one or two details, but I don't think they ever explained it. And well, lo and behold, you also get a perspective of if you've watched a Tom Clancy novel, you get the ideal. They kind of run, or not watch a Tom Clancy novel, but watch one of his movies. You could see how the plot goes, where you have all these different characters, and it's normally not until the very end you see them all kind of collide. About halfway, you get the idea of what the basic incident is. Like, at first, you're not sure really what's going on a bit. As an audience, it's not like they set it up directly. Okay, they're going to attack this place. It's a bit of a thriller, so it reveals, but at halfway, you kind of know what's going on, and now you're going to see how are these characters going to wind up coming and interacting with this. And it happens, that's what he does in this book. You are introduced to a Russian who's working for, at first they don't reveal, but you kind of, if you play the game first, some of these mysteries are kind of revealed because you immediately going in and you're knowing some of the details, you know what the end basic attack's going to be. Is going to be their environmentalists that are planning to try to wipe out the population. By the way, spoiler alerts in this. I gave that warning before, but there are spoilers. It's a 12-year-old book, people. Come on. Anyway, you have a Russian character. You have Popov, which I think of the vodka every time I read that name. You've got him. He's getting set up by a CEO who wants to arrange terrorist attacks. He's trying to figure out why. He's both ripping off the terrorists because they're paying him money. They're paying them money to launch these terrorist attacks because he's an ex-KGB guy. He's got contacts, and he's just kind of just not paying them. He's like, I'll put this in the bank. Oh. And as soon as they kind of get the terrorists die, he kind of withdraws the funds and put them in his own bank account. You kind of like the character after a while. Surprisingly, he's one of the if you think about it, he's a guy that's arranging terrorist attacks. He's stealing the money from them. He's kind of extremely greedy, but you like the character. It's amazing. It's like they Tony Starked him somehow. You get introduced, of course, to some of the scientists and environmentalists that are working on this project, that's literally the name. Their goal is to wipe out the human race, basically, except for their small select survival, because they're extreme environmentalists. They think if they can wipe out the human race, and they'll rebuild civilization that will respect Mother Nature. My only problem with him is I think, as villains, it was, I think at the time, an interesting way to, that is a new type of threat. They kind of only hint, though, at the aspect that, this is a corporation doing this. In this case, for a political ideology, but they kind of never just considered how you might have private companies and corporations manipulating these such events for just pure greed. With not doing we're going to sell guns, like rare earth minerals, man, stuff like that. Well, that's more of a modern, not a modern concept, but more of a modern issue. But stuff like that, kind of manipulating wars and stuff or even terrorist incidents, just to some other political gain, but not even for that much money. That's how I would write a book, but I'm not an author. Anyway, I digress. So that's what the terrorists are plotting, to wipe out human race. They develop a virus based on the Ebola virus, and their plan is to first release it at the Olympics, and it takes about a couple weeks for you to develop symptoms. And then after everyone across the world returns home, they infect some more people, and boom, everyone starts getting sick all over the place. This is actually kind of smart of him. I will give Tom Clancy this credit. that he kind of know, even he kind of went, yeah, this actually wouldn't wipe out the human race. Large pockets of people would survive. It would kill a couple million people. Nasty, yes, but a small, tiny speed bump for human progress. The killer is, since this is a pharmaceutical company backing this all up, and who the environmentalists kind of control, they're going to release a vaccine to the virus that gets released. That is, in fact, not a true vaccine, but one that degrades, and boom, you have the virus, and you die. And it takes about a month for that to happen. So everyone's going to be getting these shots. The few that don't, they're going to get infected by everybody else. And even then, they still acknowledge that there's going to be some groups of survivors out there, but they're going to be small and tiny. So that's their plan. However, they weren't anticipating that the new secret Black Ops team, Rainbow, has been assembled. They're headquartered in England. John Clark is the main overall director, and Domingo Chavez is Team 2 leader, Domingo Chavez, if you've seen Clear and Present Danger, he's the one commando that survived the whole thing. He actually winds up marrying John Clark's daughter, and now Clark kind of hooks up and becomes his team leader. So we see that. It's good. That's what he does. They go on a series of attacks. So they're slowly building up. I do like how they kind of lay out some of the technology, and you kind of forget about it. Like they have this incident, and I apologize that it seems like I'm kind of really spastically jumping around there. They kind of slowly introduce stuff. First, you have what looks like a simple bank robbery. Then you have a kind of hostage taking, where they're taking a high-level Wall Street type banker, only he's Austrian, so he's not obviously on Wall Street. Hostage at his castle home. Then they up the ante even more, with it being the next terrorist attack is at a theme park, and they have kids as hostages. So you can see it keeps on getting more and more, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then eventually Pavlov watches the news and figures out, wait a minute, he actually picks up on Domingo Chavez's second in command. He keeps on smoking every time they do the assault. And eventually picks up, like, that's the same guy. It keeps on getting caught on camera for the news. And he realizes this is a new team. And so, in order to make sure this doesn't affect their plans, they actually get terrorists to attack the base. So you really up the ante then is all of a sudden the counter-terrorists are being attacked directly. And then, of course, they find out what's going on. And there's a lot of cool little elements to it. However, it does show its age. This was a book that was published in 1998. So it was written in 1998, 1997. Well before our modern wars on terror and how public opinions have changed. There is perceptions. Like it's hard for a reader now to kind of go with someone like, oh, we've got to figure out how to do this tactic, how to handle the media. And you're kind of sitting there going, shouldn't you guys have already known all this? And I suppose in reality, counter-terrorist teams in the 90s already did know that, but for the common reader, that would have sounded probably more like, woo, very observant. But now for a 21st century person, it's like, that sounds like, really? You guys are just figuring this out? It seems rather intuitive, because we're kind of so much more aware of terrorism now. And of course, any book that's kind of comes out, it's 12 years old now, the kind of cool, sexy technology they have, you're not picking up because it sounds kind of outdated. So like the little things in there, like they like at one instant they had terrorists using cell phones. And back then, that would have probably sounded like such a, in the late 90s, cell phones were just starting to become, they weren't starting to become, they'd been a thing, but they were now becoming a widespread thing. And so for a lot of people back then, that would be like, oh man, you're right, cell phones, man, this is high tech, look how top of things. Now it's just so basic that you're not even picking that up. That the idea of them using cell phones would have been something high tech, a bit of a feature, something new. Now we're kind of assuming, yeah, course they're going to have cell phones of some sort. Now you want to trust the cell phone. So we've gone so far, they've become so ubiquitous, you couldn't see a terrorist using cell phones to communicate for fear that they would, because you'd be very concerned, of course, that they'd be communicated. Now, I know in Iraq and Afghanistan, cell phones are used for communications. They're especially used to detonate bombs. We're talking about a hostage taking in a major city, major Western city. You'd probably want to use radios with encryption, not regular cell phones, because it wouldn't be that hard. If they figure out they're going to probably assume you're using cell phones. When they use the jammer, they eventually introduce the idea. Oh, they think of that, and they use the jammers, and that becomes an actual plot point. And I like how they did work with that. They work with some technology, but they kind of introduce it, and you're not sure if they're going to use it or not, but they do. As for the characters, they do rather seem all the same, especially the Rainbow Team. Now, there is an argument to be made that in reality, all the people that were on that type of a team would kind of have the same style personality. You're not really going to have a dramatic, different cast of characters. It wouldn't be authentic. And so I can let that slide. If you want the authenticity of going, well, you're not going to have guys with these extremely different personalities. The type of people that get onto a top-level Special Forces team are going to kind of all be similar. I mean, they kind of have to be. They work the best when they're that way. So I can let them slide. I can let them slide on that, no problem. However, again, I said with the terrorists is you kind of don't buy a bit how environmental. They kind of do, as they're writing, kind of spew about like how humans are so horrible, but you don't really hear from like true environmentalists. They're all like, they keep on talking about how there's other members of the project that are vegans and they don't even want doctors to heal people. They want to go live in the woods and be pure. But all the people that we follow that are on this project are not those people. Or they're like the people that are hunters. And maybe it's a bit to introduce maybe an ideal of hypocrisy among them. Like these guys really aren't believing their own stuff. And I hate when authors do that. I hate when writers do that. If you're going to make an ideological enemy, make them an ideological enemy. Don't make them, even if it's a subtle hint of hypocrisy, have them be pure. That's when you have a good villain. When they're pure, you go, at least they believe in their ideals. Truly. Now, that's something I was picking up. I'm not sure if all readers are going to pick that up or read that in the characters, but they do. The other thing, as I said earlier, about the difference in times, and this kind of clashes with what I said was jingoistic, and this is a great example. If you want to see how things have changed, this, when it was written, sounded really, really kind of like out there. Like the tactics they would employ, manipulating the media for the sake, protecting the public. This would have been much more like, they shouldn't do that type of stuff. Even to the point where at the end, they're kind of regarded like, do we arrest these people? How do we arrest them? Are we going to be able to charge them in court? Think of the implications of all this. And nowadays, not only would you probably couldn't actually sell it that, we can't let the public know that Arizona was a terrorist attack. Like, yes, you can. They're going to be more pissed off if they find out there was an attempted mass wipe-out of humanity terrorist attack, and you didn't tell them. And you can also kill them. Like, that was their big dilemma. It's like, what do we do with them? Well, it turns out we throw them in an island prison and wait like 15. We wait 12 years, and we take a decade to figure out exactly what we're gonna do, how we're gonna try them, and all that stuff. It seems to be the solution. But even the bigger thing is like, we can't just kill these people. We can kill if they resist, but we can't just go and assassinate them. Because really, back in the 90s, that became like the very unthinkable thing for the government to do. And even Tom Clancy, as kind of militant and, as I said before, jingoistic, I think that's got to be the term of this word of the review, jingoistic today. If you don't know what it means, you should look it up. Get a thesaurus. thesaurus, whatever. Um, Even him couldn't believe he could sell a we're not gonna it's the modern era, we don't assassinate and just kind of kill people now, and here we are 12 years later. It's like president comes on news, hey, we assassinated Osama, we killed him, woo. And what's the public's reaction? Party in the streets. So I mean, nowadays, as you're reading it, the ending is they use this little heart monitor tracker, which apparently was like one of those hypothetical technologies that never panned out really. So they put in here now. That's one of those technologies at the time when they release it, you think, oh wow, that's gonna. I guarantee you there's stuff like that out there, and now you don't really see it. So now it's just like, where the fuck did this thing come from? This doesn't seem very realistic. We don't have that now. They had this decade and a half ago. That's always the risk of writing that stuff. But regardless, they go out and they kind of announce that they're coming in to get the environmentalists. They're at this Brazilian facility, and well and behold, the scientists, I don't know what they're thinking, because there's like 50. I think they said there was 50, maybe less, of them. And there's there's only like 15 of these rainbow guys, but they're like the top. They're the best of the best, literally. You guys are scientists. This isn't gonna end well, because and then they send like 20 of them out. That's almost 1 for 1. I don't care if some of you guys, if they try to say, well, he's an experienced hunter. This guy was in the army. So what if the guy was in the army? You're dealing with the guy that's the elite of the army that went into an even more elite group. That's not comparing. That's not equal. Yeah, just because you're in the army doesn't mean you're commando level special forces dude. Especially like that. Like that's what I'm trying to say. As I'm reading this, they're trying to make these guys at the end seem way more of a threat than as you're reading it going, these guys are going to get slaughtered. Not the heroes, the bad guys. I mean, this is turkey shoot. And it does become a turkey shoot, because you immediately, that they probably should have done without this heart monitor thing. Because one, they have that, so you know exactly how this is going to pan out. That, oh, we know exactly where everyone is, so we're just going to sneak up and shoot them. Which they do. And after they've kind of killed everyone that went out into the woods to try to intercept and ambush the rainbow team, the rest of them all surrender, and instead of doing what they probably would do now, well, actually nowadays they would just take their little facility and go, yep, well, we're going to bomb that. We didn't get permission from Brazil to go down there? Fuck no. That's all we do. We'd go, targeted selection, bomb the building, kill everyone inside. Not really that many people would complain about it, as we know. I mean, we're doing that all the time to Pakistan. We've done it to Somalia. We've done it in Yemen. So we kind of do that. If we know there's terrorists, we kind of go, that's a fucking terrorist. We're going to kill them. We're not going to bother asking permission to go and kill them either. Osama bin Laden example, which is another hilarious one, because here we've only got 15 guys, and you look at the Osama bin Laden raid when they had how many Navy SEALs? They had 40 SEALs go in, and they only thought they knew there was only 3 to 5 guys in that building. Because let's face it, in real life you want overwhelming numbers. You guys can be elite too, but you want to have numbers as well, just in case. But they capture these guys, and they decide that they're just going to blow up the building, strip the remaining environmental terrorists naked, and let them loose in the woods. And with the idea that they all died in the woods. Well, a couple things here. That's kind of a big risk, because you didn't really ID who all these people were. What if a couple of them get out? You're kind of within your own logic. You're stuck now because you can't do jack shit to them. If they get out of the woods, and they get back to civilization, you didn't do anything to the company that they worked for, and these people were on the ins. So if they get back, they can run that company again, and they're going to do exactly what they did before. Especially considering some of these people were planning on doing pretty much what you just did. And yeah, you're trying to make I get he's trying to make some of a point that they're not really in tune with nature the way they think. Again, going with the kind of hypocritical argument, which a lot of people do. I notice it every time they do, and I'm like, come on, make it like these guys would legitimately pull this off, because that would be a little bit scarier. They also had early established that there was probably a couple tribes in there. So, like, what happens if these guys hit one of these tribes, and the tribes took them back to civilization? You're dealing with a lot of people that probably are happy in the woods. And yeah, it's tough in the Brazilian jungle, but people can survive. People come out of it. And you just let 30 people loose in there. As a group, they can probably make their way out if they stick together. Even in smaller groups, they can probably make their way out. At least one or two of them. If not more. If not like half the group. So that was my problems with the ending. I would have... Again, though, that's probably me reading it from a different time period. I'm aware of that. However, like I said before, what might really throw you off is it's kind of very jingoistic. You kind of have like every single character. A character is really not worth anything unless they were in the military. They're in the military, or at one time they were. Like, any person that shows any confidence, seems like Tom Clancy takes a pause and goes, yes, so says the engineer who spent 2 years in the Air Force. Because he said something smart, and if somebody else is kind of saying something not so smart, no mention. Or if somebody's kind of less competent. There's one or two characters that aren't that, but overall, that's pretty much how it's written. And after a while, it becomes rather comical. Because you're almost like saying, this guy sounds half competent. How much you want to bet the next paragraph he's going to talk about how he was formerly in the military? Oh, look, he was formerly in the military. I mean, yeah, that's the book you're writing, but when it comes to outside civilians, you don't have to make them all ex-military. Again, that's why I'm kind of interested if he's writing to appease his crowd, if he knows who he's writing for now. I want to see earlier if stuff was written that way. Also, and here's where you can really slam Tom Clancy for just being lazy with characters. Alright, in the Jack Ryan series, his wife is a doctor. That's not a bad combination. Career woman. Intelligent, obviously. She's got her own job. It seems right. And what if it was just that? No one would make any... I don't think I would make any mention of it. However, in this book, John Clark's wife. She's kind of like a head nurse. His daughter, Domingo Chavez's wife, is a doctor. And you're picking up this here, and you're kind of going, he only knows how to write women one way, doesn't he? If he's going to write them competently, he just has this one character archetype. I mean, to have already your main character have this set up, and then to do it again. And I don't know, maybe in one of the previous novels they established John Clark's wife, and maybe that was a point in one of the earlier novels they were trying to make, is, oh, I have a wife too. I have a wife in medicine too. Oh, really? Maybe that happened. Like, again, I said, I haven't read all of his novels. I read this one. But I know a bit about the other ones. And so it becomes this really, like, that is lazy writing. That's really lazy writing. And you kind of telling us you only know how to write a competent female character one way. You only know one archetype. You can't do anything else. You can't make her a lawyer? Vary it up a bit, man. I mean, school teacher would be stereotypical, but considering using the same thing over, at least it would add some variety. Or just pick a career for her. Anything. Anything she can do, a man can, or anything really. Well, okay, again, this was written in 98. This was... Military, when it comes to gender, is much more integrated now than it ever has been before, to the point where in the Army, you have, not at every training facility, but you have fully integrated training companies, where other than using the toiletries, or other than going to the bathroom and showering, it's mixed genders all the time. Mixed gendered PT, mixed gender firing range, mixed gender classes, and we're talking about basic training. So I guess it's a sign of the times. It's again another one of those where you can maybe excuse that part for. Well, my point I was trying to make is why can't any of the female characters be in the military? It's not like we just let females in. They've been in for a while. That's the only point. It kind of, if I didn't know the Jack Ryan stuff, I probably wouldn't have brought this up. And now I would also be curious to see if that pops up again and again and again in his novels. Somebody tell me. I guarantee you somebody watching this has read other Tom Clancy novels. Tell me, is this the only three characters, the female characters that he's done like this, or are there others where he writes them as like medical professionals? Is that a trope of his? I'm curious about this now. Anyway, so overall, do I recommend it? It's an interesting read. I think it's a very good for getting an idea of the mentality of terrorism pre 9/11. It's a really good book to pick up and get that. If you want to get the idea of the general sense that people had psychologically of terrorism and how terrorism was dealt with and how you did this, is while not dealing factually with anything, it gives you an idea of what the mass media mindset would have been. After all, this is Tom Clancy. He was back then kind of like one of the top authors out there. He's still very popular. I'm just going back to what I said before. I'm just saying he's not as popular as he used to be. And I think for a couple of those reasons, it's the way he writes. It's harder to kind of believe. I think he fell into the trap that he believed the Gulf War I was going to set the tempo for how wars were fought from here on out. And as it turned out, it looks like more like the Gulf War might have been the last hurrah for more stand-up traditional war. But it never assumed stuff like that, because who knows? Maybe after Iraq and Afghanistan, there'll be a stand-up war we're going to have to fight with. Looking over at the map here, Peru. Who knows? Give it another 15 years. Crazy stuff can happen. Look what's going on in the Middle East right now. I can tell you, actually, there weren't many professionals in the field that were calling the Arab Spring. I'm serious with that. That's inside information right there, because right before the Arab Spring, I did an internship at a Department of Defense think tank specializing in the Middle East. None of the people there were calling that at all. In fact, I remember they held a seminar and it was a lecture, and one of the lecturers said something along the lines like, these regimes are extremely stable. They're probably not going to change much over the next 10, 20 years. 2 months later, Tunisia. Literally, I leave, I get back, and when I saw this stuff happening, I immediately shoot back my old supervisor there. I'm like, I bet things have gotten interesting since I've left. So, you never know how things change, and this is a good example of that. How you're seeing how literally came out in '98, so that's 3 years before 9/11. This is the mentality we thought of terrorism. It's probably one of the key examples of it. And in just a couple of years, how we have a completely different perspective on how we handle these things. It's amazing. So that's it for now. Signing off. Didn't see a movie this weekend, so there's not going to be I don't plan on doing a movie review, just because there's not much to talk about really. Nothing really was jumping out at me. Of course, though, The Hobbit is coming out soon. We've got The Hobbit. We've got Les Miserables. French pronunciation. I'm horrible with French pronunciations. I apologize. It's better. The first time I actually read the title of that I thought it was Les Miserables. You gotta get the pronunciation right. And of course, Django Unchained. Those are both kind of coming out for Christmas. I'm gonna probably see Les Miserables. And wait a minute. Oh, and after that, Zero Dark 30 comes out. Since we're talking about terrorism, that comes out in January. This actually looks like there's stuff coming out after Christmas for once that I want to see. We've got, of course, The Last Stand coming out, and then, of course, slowly we roll into the summer season. We'll finally get to see what they've messed up in the fucking G.I. Joe movie. I want to see that original cut at some point. But that's kind of the projections here. Those are you should be seeing at least those three that I talked about, the December releases, being reviewed. Those I plan on seeing. Life can interfere and ruin our plans. I also might do a trailer reaction or two coming up. I've seen this Star Trek trailer. I don't know when I'm gonna get a chance to do that, because out of my two jobs, I've had a crazy schedule right now since I took on a second job. To the point where a lot of my days are ruined. I'm slowly balancing them out to which days, but I'm still technically, depending on how the week goes, because I have one job where it's kind of on a daily basis you're calling, but it's rather consistent. I normally am able to skip a day, but I'm really kind of working 6 days a week. And easily 7 days can happen too. So I get very tired, and a lot of times I'm just I don't feel like doing recording for 40 minutes. I'm slowly working out and hammering out the schedule, so I figure I'll get a little more free time. And hopefully, who knows, hopefully I get a more professional level job. I can quit both of these jobs and just have a normal 9 to 5. 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's the goal. That's the dream. God, if I can I will appreciate the hell out of that one. If I can get that something, a normal job like that. Not pay too great, but now just to have a set. I work between this hour and this hour, and I have these 2 days off, and that's set. That's every week. I know that. My God, I can make so many plans around that, unlike my current schedule. But I'm signing off. Signing off for now, guys. I'm rambling on. Hasta luego. Those are the updates for the week. See you around. Happy holidays. Oh, actually, I'll see you back for Middle Earth, unless I do something else in between.